The king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. No other name is more familiar or more iconic throughout the world. When he died at age 42, it was undeniable that Elvis's legacy would live on. But no one predicted the massive fame and fortune that would cultivate and spread over the decades following his death.
Elvis Presley was a massive star when he died. His star had reached mythological proportions.
Not realizing the infinite impact his image and music would have, Elvis simply wanted to leave his legacy to his only child, Lisa Marie Presley.
And the potential for merchandising and everything else after he passes away could make that astronomical. To give that all to a 25-year-old is a little frightening.
But like so many who die suddenly, Elvis didn't put a lot of thought into who should be in charge of his incredible estate.
It's beyond insulting to Elvis and his memory, and it's a terrible deal for the family.
What Elvis had that many people today don't have is pure, raw talent. And I think that that's something that he's going to always be remembered for.
The fame, the fortune, the legacy of Elvis Presley. At the time of his death, Elvis Presley was the most famous and prolific recording artist in America. And decades later, he remains the best-selling solo performer in the history of recorded music. Elvis was ranked the second wealthiest dead celebrity by Forbes in 2013, following Michael Jackson. But his bank account was shocking when he died in 1977. And when his estate ends up being controlled by someone it wasn't intended, it takes years of battles and empire building for Elvis's family to create a solid legacy. This is the story of all that he left behind. Elvis Aaron Presley is born January 8, 1935, to parents Vernon and Gladys in a two-room shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. His twin brother Jesse is stillborn. Elvis and his mother develop a very deep bond. When he's 11, Elvis uses his savings to buy his first guitar. It costs $7.75 at the Tupelo hardware store. His uncle Vester gives him basic guitar lessons.
Elvis is a loner as a kid, and he brings his guitar to school with him every day and sings in the schoolyard at lunchtime. But the kids really tease him. They call him trashy, and they say that he plays some hillbilly music.
When Elvis is 13, his family moves to Memphis, where there are better opportunities for work. Elvis begins high school and joins the football team. He expresses his distinctive personality with a pompadour hairstyle inspired by his idols James Dean and Marlon Brando. When he refuses to trim his sideburns, he gets cut from the football team. Elvis spends time alone, playing along with the radio. B.B. King and R&B are exploding.
A young Elvis Presley growing up in the 1940s loved all types of music: gospel, hillbilly, country, blues, rhythm and blues. Elvis Presley with his band gave it more of an upbeat style. That gave us what today is known as rockabilly, and then ultimately with amplification and more drums, we got rock and roll.
Elvis auditions for the school's annual minstrel show. The oddball kid's talent takes everyone by surprise, and he's a hit. Elvis's parents can't afford to send him to college, so after graduation, he gets a job at a machine shop. He uses most of his first paycheck to make a recording at Sun Studios, a small independent label where anyone could come in to record.
One day, Elvis Presley walked in to make a record for his mom as a birthday present.
He's also hoping to impress the studio owner, Sam Phillips.
At the time in Memphis, the music scene was very diverse. There was gospel music, hillbilly, country, blues, rhythm and blues. Sam Phillips was open and willing to record any type of music.
In April 1954, Elvis is driving a truck for an electrical firm and studying to become an electrician, but music is his passion. Fortunately, he's about to get a break thanks to guitarist Scotty Moore.
Scotty Moore had a country band called the Starlight Wranglers, and he didn't like his lead singer. He wanted to know if Sam could give him the name of some vocalist that he could rehearse with. His secretary said, well, what about that boy Elvis who came in here and recorded that song for his mom? So the secretary of Sam Phillips hands a piece of paper to Scotty Moore that says, Elvis Presley and a phone number, and that's where the first session happened, the first rehearsal with Elvis Presley. Scotty called Sam and said, I think we ought to give this kid a shot. Let's do a demo session.
Sam Phillips has Elvis record 2 singles with Scotty and Bill Black, That's All Right and Blue Moon of Kentucky. 2 months later, the trio make their first appearance at the Grand Ole Opry. It falls flat. As they leave, the guy in the talent office tells Elvis he'd better stick to truck driving. Elvis considers giving up, but then a month later, he and the band get a weekly contract with Louisiana Hayride, a live-to-radio country music show program. He takes home roughly $18 per show. Word spreads, and by their second show, young people are showing up, squealing and cheering when Elvis makes his moves.
Elvis is known for his famous gyrations on stage. What people don't know is that this actually was born out of nervousness. Elvis would twitch his leg, and he was also at the same time very rhythmic. So when you combine that with the wide trousers that he would wear, it turned into this sensation of gyric movements, and women just loved it. At least that's the legend of Elvis the Pelvis.
October 23, 1954. Blue Moon of Kentucky moves to the top of the charts, hitting the #3 spot in New Orleans. Elvis quits his day job as a truck driver and buys his first Cadillac. Memphis DJ Bob Neal starts managing Elvis's career in January 1955. He works occasionally with concert promoter Colonel Tom Parker, who manages country singers Gene Austin and Hank Snow, and often puts various acts together on a single bill. He books Elvis.
Parker wasn't a real colonel at all, actually. He was a Dutch-born carnival barker named Andreas van Kuik. The governor of Louisiana gave Parker the honorary title of colonel in the Louisiana State Militia.
Parker sees that once Elvis gets on stage, there's no getting him off. He realizes that this young man could be his ticket to fortune. He makes Elvis the special added attraction of the Hank Snow All-Star Jamboree in May 1955. Parker sends Elvis on a tour around the South and has another Sun Records newcomer open for him, Johnny Cash. Elvis's rockabilly image is a hit, and Elvis's reputation is spreading like wildfire. By November 1955, Parker sees that Elvis has clearly outgrown what Sun Records can do for him and sets his sights higher on RCA Victor, the biggest recording company in the world. Parker manages to broker a contract for Elvis by having RCA buy out his contract from Sun Records for a total of $35,000 plus unpaid royalties of $5,000.
This deal took 15 days to hammer out, and $35,000 was a lot of money, especially for an up-and-comer who had never gotten a contract before. In today's dollars, that would be about $350,000.
This was really RCA taking a big chance because Elvis was unknown. He didn't fit into any traditional music categories, so they really were rolling the dice with this deal. And Colonel Tom Parker knew this was a really big step in Elvis's career, and this was going to expose him nationally and internationally to whole new levels. It was going to be very, very lucrative for Elvis and, of course, for Colonel Tom Parker as well.
The RCA contract launches a formal partnership between Elvis and Tom Parker. Elvis replaces Bob Neal with Parker as his manager and agrees that Parker will take 25% of his earnings. It's a huge gamble for RCA, and Elvis's father signs the contract since Elvis is considered a minor. Elvis privately keeps Bob Neal on as an advisor, paying his 15% commission out of his own pocket.
Nobody called Elvis anything other than generous. Especially if you were in his inner circle, he really took care of you.
Colonel Parker now has the green light to expand Elvis's career. He sets his sights on building a fortune that will benefit them both. In January of 1956, Elvis records the single Heartbreak Hotel, and on March 23, 1956, just 3 years after he's finished high school, he releases his first album.
It rose to the top of the charts and sold more than 300,000 copies in its initial release, which was a record for RCA.
Elvis is the hottest thing around, and Hollywood comes calling. Elvis has always idolized James Dean and Marlon Brando and fantasized about acting in films. He signs a contract with Paramount Pictures for one movie at $15,000, but with the option of 6 more. The payment would increase by $5,000 per film.
This was another groundbreaking deal. I mean, to do a movie deal of this size with Paramount for a musician, it was really unheard of.
In fact, between 56 and 69, he starred in 30 movies. And in today's dollar, with all the revenue from those movies, that would be about $1 billion.
Right away, the Colonel arranges a similar deal at 20th Century, ensuring that Elvis will be seen in 4 Hollywood movies. For the next 10 years, Parker will play one studio off the other to ensure Elvis a steady supply of work. 1 month later, in April 1956, Heartbreak Hotel goes gold. Colonel Parker is on a roll. He sets his sights on Las Vegas. Elvis is booked for 2 weeks at the New Frontier Hotel, but his show falls flat the very first night.
What was the Colonel thinking? Elvis's fan base at this time was a much younger crowd, and Vegas goers were actually much older and conservative. They really weren't ready for all of the raunchy moves that Elvis would do in his performances.
The Colonel needs to think fast, because 2 weeks is a long time with an unappreciating audience. But for Elvis, he's just enjoying the amazing flow of money. It's 1956. At age 22, just 3 years since making his first recording, Elvis Presley has acquired a shrewd business manager, Colonel Tom Parker, struck a groundbreaking record deal with the biggest recording company in the world, and signed movie contracts with 2 major Hollywood studios. But his recent gig in Vegas is falling flat on an older audience.
Colonel Parker was such a wheeler and dealer, and he really knew how to shift gears fast. He booked high school shows in Las Vegas, and that really turned the tables. It got all of the teenagers in Las Vegas turned on to Elvis and then buying his records.
Colonel Parker now needs a new strategy to expand Elvis's career. The Colonel strategically books a succession of TV appearances on variety shows.
Elvis appeared on Steve Allen's show in a little segment in which he sang the song Hound Dog to an actual hound dog. It was a ratings bonanza, and it actually forced the Ed Sullivan Show to come calling on Elvis.
The Colonel seals a deal for 3 appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show for $50,000. On September 9th, Elvis performs 4 songs on the show to 54 million viewers. 2 weeks later, Hound Dog sells 1 million copies, which translates into $1 million in sales. Elvis surprises his mother with a celebratory gift, a 1955 pink Fleetwood Cadillac. The money is rolling in, and Elvis's father, Vernon, is in charge.
It's very interesting that Elvis chose his father to manage all of his money. This was an unsophisticated individual, his dad. So it's very surprising he didn't pick someone who was used to dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. But on the other hand, he trusted his dad. And in the entertainment business, trust is a huge item that you just can't pay someone for.
Elvis's first film for 20th Century, Love Me Tender, first appears November 15, 1957 in New York's Times Square. His fee is $100,000. It's a box office smash and recoups its $1 million budget in only 3 days. His second film, Loving You, made for Paramount, is actually contracted earlier for the modest sum of $15,000. But after the success of Love Me Tender, the Colonel brings the studio back to the table and negotiates a $50,000 increase for a total fee of $65,000.
Colonel Tom Parker really was a bit of a con man and a hustler, and maybe a bit is being kind here, because he used these really aggressive negotiating tactics, which of course paid off for Elvis at times, but really cost him at other times.
Colonel Parker was very clever in that he created a synergy for Elvis Presley to make films and at the same time record a companion soundtrack. As a result, the soundtrack helped sell the movie, and the movies helped sell the soundtracks.
Elvis is constantly besieged by the press and adoring fans, making it impossible to lead a normal life. But his wealth allows him to separate himself from the general public, especially in his home city of Memphis.
Elvis starts buying more cars, and this actually becomes a lifelong obsession. Over the course of his life, Elvis either buys or gives away more than 200 Cadillacs to friends and family.
In March of 1957, Elvis has reportedly sold 12.5 million singles and almost 3 million albums. Elvis gives his parents $100,000 to find a nice farmhouse in the country. What they choose is Graceland, a tan limestone colonial revival mansion with 23 rooms, including 8 bedrooms and bathrooms. Elvis spends a small fortune making extensive modifications.
Some of the things he does around the property is add in fieldstone walls, a swimming pool, a racquetball court, and the jungle room, in which it has an indoor waterfall. Graceland actually becomes the center of Elvis's universe and a place that's very, very special to him.
Once the family settles into Graceland, Elvis returns to Hollywood to film Jailhouse Rock. His career as a musician and movie heartthrob is thriving. But just before Christmas, he gets a shock. He's been drafted.
Now, obviously, you'd think that Elvis, with all his money and influence, could get out of being drafted if he really wanted to.
But he didn't. In fact, the Colonel originally didn't like the idea, but then he thought this might actually help Elvis's public image.
And reportedly, Colonel Tom Parker really had to talk Elvis into this. He was worried about being out of the public eye for 2 years when he was in the Army.
Elvis was, at the time, working on a film and an album. He asked the draft board in a letter whether he could have an extension, and they in fact granted him a 3-month extension. This would allow Colonel Parker to continue to put out Elvis Presley product while Elvis was over in Germany.
King Creole marks Elvis's 4th Hollywood movie, and already the Colonel is renegotiating contracts. He changes the deal with Paramount for an extra $50,000 bonus plus $30,000 for expenses on top of his previously negotiated fee of $20,000. It is later discovered that he's cleaning up for himself, getting side deal percentages of the film's profits and record deals associated with movie soundtracks. On September 22, 1958, after basic training, a superbly fit Elvis boards the USS Randall and sails to Friedberg, Germany, where he'll be stationed for 18 months of service. While Elvis is in the Army, his mother falls ill and dies. He has always had sleep problems, and now it's worse. A sergeant introduces him to amphetamines to keep him awake during basic training, and now he's also using barbiturates to sleep. While Elvis is away, record sales drop. By November 1959, for the first time in 5 years, there are no Elvis records on the charts. But Elvis is distracted. He's grieving for his mother and also becomes smitten by a 14-year-old girl he's met at a party, Priscilla Beaulieu, the stepdaughter of a U.S. Air Force colonel. On March 5, 1960, Elvis is officially discharged from military service and collects his final Army paycheck of $109.54.
And within 2 weeks, he was back in the recording studio in Nashville at RCA, already working on a new album with Scotty Moore and drummer DJ Fontana.
By May, Elvis is fully up to speed. He's shooting a new film called G.I. Blues. He appears on Frank Sinatra's TV variety show for a $125,000 fee, and he earns a black belt in karate. Although Elvis has had a long list of casual girlfriends, as well as dalliances with his movie co-stars, he's been maintaining a telephone romance with Priscilla, who is now 15. Elvis is convinced Priscilla is the one. Elvis's father, Vernon, remarries, and he and his wife, Dee, move into their own house on the property. And an entourage of Elvis's cousins and boyhood friends, who come to be known as the Memphis Mafia, move in. These men act as bodyguards and companions and deal with tour logistics, scheduling, and security.
The Memphis Mafia actually is becoming almost as popular as Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack. Elvis and his crew are staying out late, they're going to shows, they're boozing it up, and there's lots of women. Unfortunately, Elvis and his crew are also taking speed and tranquilizers and other drugs in order to maintain this lifestyle.
In April of 1961, Elvis plays a concert in Hawaii and stays on for the filming of another formulaic movie musical, Blue Hawaii. He's yearning for media roles, but the money is good. On top of his more than $150,000 per picture fee, the Colonel has renegotiated the deals to include bonuses and 50% of all profits on some films.
It was unheard of at the time for a star to have that much power and draw that they could actually get 50% of the net back end of the movie deals.
But he was called Elvis the Pelvis. I mean, this was Elvis after all.
Well, if anyone can do it, the king can. But the real interesting wrinkle here is that it's 50% of the net profits. So what does that mean in Elvis's pocket at the end of the day? It could all be eaten up with cost and percentages and fees and side deals. So maybe it wasn't so lucrative as everybody thought.
The Colonel went to Paramount and said, Elvis is such a draw for you guys that we're gonna require double payment. And on top of that, we want even back-end royalties and back-end deals. Elvis was such a huge draw for Paramount that they just couldn't say no.
By April 21st, 1962, the single Good Luck Charm reaches the top spot.
As the mid-60s moved on, people got tired of a lot of the same bland films that Elvis was making. Meanwhile, competition was coming abroad, the British invasion, the Beatles, the Stones, the Who. Elvis had really lost his edge, He hadn't been out on the stage since about 1960. His career really reached a stall point at this time.
Elvis is stagnating as an artist, and he's bored and frustrated. He distracts himself by spending money.
Elvis wants to keep everyone in his entourage in style, and so he's frequently buying his friends Cadillacs and even purchasing new homes for friends as wedding gifts.
It's estimated Elvis's generosity cost him $2 million annually during his lifetime.
I mean, he should have just opened up his own Cadillac dealer and he could have been the best customer. I mean, it's crazy how he was spending like this.
He also buys another house in Beverly Hills for $400,000.
Well, of course, he's a movie star. You gotta have a $400,000 house in Beverly Hills.
At 78 million records sold, Elvis is the highest paid entertainer in the world.
And in fact, he was the highest single taxpayer in the entire country.
In 1966, Elvis proposes to Priscilla with a 3.5-carat diamond ring. Elvis and Priscilla are due to marry at the end of 1967. But in late April, Colonel Parker decides that a wedding right now will boost Elvis's flagging career. He persuades the couple to move up the date and arranges a small private midnight ceremony on May 1st at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. The wedding, arranged by Parker to maximize publicity, featured few guests and was over in only 8 minutes. It was followed by a quick press conference and a $10,000 breakfast reception, attended by friends, family, and business associates from MGM, RCA, and the William Morris Agency.
Parker should absolutely not be organizing Elvis's own wedding. By allowing Parker to intrude so much into his personal life, it's actually something that's going to come back to haunt him in the future and his estate.
Elvis Presley, the greatest cultural icon of the 20th century, has made 28 movies, sold 78 million records, and taken a wife, all within the 50s and 60s. His fame has become astronomical, and his fortune is following right along with it. But by the end of the 60s, Elvis is getting tired of making films and wants to return to live stage performing.
Many have criticized Colonel Parker at this point in Elvis's career for milking the whole cookie-cutter movie with bland soundtracks too long. Some people may have thought that that would have been a good time for Elvis to change managers, but he always remained loyal to Parker till his last day.
It's that loyalty that will end up haunting Elvis's legacy long after he's gone. Colonel Parker soon realizes that Elvis's massive fan base is clamoring for concerts. It's a huge market that hasn't been tapped in 10 years, while Elvis has been making movies. The Colonel plans a comeback show that will be taped for television. Meanwhile, on February 1st, 1968, exactly 9 months from their wedding day, Priscilla gives birth to Lisa Marie Presley.
It's great for Elvis to know that he's got an heir to his rising fortune, but at the same time, Elvis is known as one of the most sexual human beings on the face of the planet. He's trying to revive his career, and it's not really clear if his image as being a father is gonna help or hurt him.
On December 3rd, 1968, Elvis's comeback special is a huge hit.
It was a great show. It had all types of dance sequences and great musical performances, and it was a great move by Colonel Parker in that he allowed Elvis to do some of the musical sequences with Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana, his old buddies from the 50s. That little theater in the round acoustic jam that they did on their old hit tunes was really a precursor to the Unplugged show.
Music and pop culture historians consider Elvis's '68 comeback to be one of the greatest achievements and one of the best comebacks of all time.
The show is the biggest hit for NBC for the season, capturing 42% of the viewership.
And in the end, there was an album, of course, and the album sold millions of copies and revitalized Elvis's career at that point.
The King is ready to return to the stage. The Colonel leverages a deal that has Elvis opening a brand new international hotel in Las Vegas. It's a month-long engagement at $125,000 a week, beginning July 31st, 1969.
$125,000 was unheard of at the time. That would be about $800,000 today.
But it came with a price tag. Parker pressures Elvis to agree to a 50-50 partnership, doubling his already large percentage. Unlike the previous gentleman's agreement, this one is put in writing, but kept secret.
There was some egregious double dipping going on here, so it's not like Colonel Tom Parker was satisfied with how much money he had already been bringing in from Elvis. He had to start taking from Elvis's side too, so he actually makes more money from merchandising than Elvis does.
That's crazy, but you know, this could have been to support his gambling habit. Supposedly, the Colonel gambled up to $1 million a night, so Elvis was his cash cow.
It's July 31st, 1969, 13 years after his first show in Vegas bombed.
That night for Elvis was one where he was both nervous but also anxious to go out and prove himself to the crowd. The crowd was just electric with anticipation for Elvis to come out on stage. He came out on stage and knocked it out of the park. Everybody knew that the king was back.
After 10 standing ovations, a triumphant Elvis returns to his penthouse suite and phones the hotel manager. To celebrate his return to big live shows, he orders 30 diamond-studded Rolex watches for the boys. Then he calls the local Cadillac dealer and orders 14 cars, one for each of his closest friends back in Memphis.
Generosity is one thing, but this is something else. This does not make financial sense at all.
With 2 high-energy shows per night, Elvis and his entourage never get to bed before dawn. The pills are essential, and Elvis is now dependent on barbiturates, amphetamines, and painkillers. And the king, who was 165 pounds early in his career, is now up to 250 pounds. Occasionally, he seems sluggish on stage, slurring his words and forgetting song lyrics. Yet the fans keep flocking to his shows. Colonel Parker secures an income base by negotiating 2 engagements a year for 5 years for an annual salary of $1.2 million.
Elvis and Priscilla split up after she admitted to having an affair with a karate instructor. But everybody pretty much knew that Elvis was well known for having lots of girlfriends on the side.
Elvis and Priscilla separate on February 23, 1972, and divorce amicably the following year, agreeing to share custody of Lisa Marie.
When Elvis Presley was divorcing Priscilla, they had reached a verbal settlement so that Priscilla would receive $100,000 in cash. But Priscilla's lawyers convinced her that Elvis was really worth more, so eventually she received $750,000 in cash, as well as half the income from each of their 3 California properties that were sold.
By now, Elvis's Vegas fee has risen to $150,000 per week. But the fatigue from years of strange sleep patterns is catching up with him, and Elvis is experiencing a variety of joint and throat pain. Twice in 1973, he overdoses on barbiturates and is hospitalized for a Demerol addiction. Despite this, Elvis tours more intensely than ever, playing 168 concerts in 1973 alone.
One day on tour, Elvis was very sick and a doctor had to be called to try to revive him because he was subdued from taking so many pills. The doctor actually had to dunk his head in ice water in order to get him to come to. When Parker saw this, he told the bodyguard, "The only thing that matters is that that man gets on stage tonight." And then he walked out of the room.
Supposedly, he had to keep on remortgaging Graceland just to keep up with his spending and to paying the bills.
There are salaries for Elvis's bodyguards, his drivers, his manager, the tour manager, and of course, he's very well known for giving out generous Christmas bonuses. In addition to this, all of the guys in Elvis's entourage have diamond rings that are inscribed with TCB, taking care of business. And of course, everybody knows about his infamous gold-plated guns.
In 1975, Elvis begins buying airplanes. He buys a 1958 Convair 880 jet for $250,000 and a Lockheed Jetstar for close to $900,000.
There was huge pent-up demand worldwide for people to see Elvis Presley live, especially in Europe. But Colonel Parker never let Elvis Presley tour outside the country except for a few shows in Canada.
In fact, supposedly Elvis was offered a multi-million-dollar Australian tour, which Parker turned down. In addition, he was offered $28,000 to perform in London.
Yeah, the story was that Tom Parker said he was from West Virginia, but he was really born in the Netherlands.
And if he had traveled abroad, he would have had to apply for a passport. I don't think Colonel Parker wanted to apply for a passport. As a result, Elvis Presley could never go and fulfill those dreams to tour the world.
And that really cost Elvis all of these lucrative opportunities.
To please worldwide fans, the Colonel devises a scheme for a concert in Hawaii that will be simultaneously broadcast live around the world by satellite. It's the world's first full-length live televised concert, and it's a huge hit.
It mushroomed Elvis's popularity. He just grew to mythological proportion, and the resulting album from the show sold in the millions.
The Colonel plans a new succession of interstate U.S. tours to ride this new wave of success. Elvis's lifestyle of performing by night and sleeping on his Concorde by day wears him down. He's riddled with health problems, and his drug use increases. In spring of 1977, a fatigued-looking Elvis collapses on stage. and is taken to hospital for exhaustion. Several shows are canceled, and when he returns to Memphis a few days later, he decides to make out his will. It's August 15th, 1977. As usual, Elvis sleeps until late in the afternoon. He'll be leaving for Maine in 2 days' time. After breakfast, he spends the day with 9-year-old Lisa Marie. During the evening, he chats with fiancée Ginger Alden about their upcoming wedding plans. He phones his doctor for more medication. At 4 a.m., he plays a round of racquetball, then tries to unwind at the piano. At 7 a.m., cousin Billy Smith washes Elvis's hair as he vents his frustrations about the next round of touring before taking his dose of sleep medication. At 7:30 a.m., he takes another dose, and another an hour later. He tells his fiancée he's going to read for a while in the bathroom before heading to bed. That afternoon, Ginger Alden wakes up and notices Elvis is not in bed. She checks the bathroom. Elvis's lifeless body is on the floor. Ambulances rush to the scene. Elvis is pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. August 16th of cardiac arrest. He is 42 years old. By mid-afternoon, it is announced to the world the king of rock and roll is dead. And while Elvis's family and fans grieve, Colonel Parker begins planning and scheming that will affect Elvis's legacy for years to come. August 16th, 1977, Elvis Presley, the king, is dead. A show business legend by the time he was 25, Elvis was once the highest paid performer in history. Although he was a millionaire, Elvis had accumulated much more. He had single-handedly changed the direction of music forever. Fans, male and female alike, literally revered him as the king of rock and roll. Elvis would never see the iconic status he would achieve. He left one of the world's greatest legacies behind, and Colonel Tom Parker was quick to take the helm. On hearing of Elvis's death, Parker makes 2 phone calls. The first is to Elvis's father, Vernon Presley. The second is to RCA Records, preparing them for an upcoming demand for Elvis music. 2 days after Presley's death, while his body is lying in state at Graceland, Parker approaches Vernon, who is executor of his son's estate.
Vernon Presley says that Colonel Tom Parker approached him and said, now that Elvis is dead, there are going to be pirates and scam artists coming after you, so you've got to sign over to me and I'll help protect you.
Parker came to Vernon knowing he had a serious heart condition, and he told him handling the estate would put too much stress on him, so he should really turn it over to Parker.
So Parker had him sign a document that let him continue to manage the income just like he did when Elvis was alive. Now, this was certainly underhanded and unethical, but it probably wouldn't have violated any laws at the time.
Today, of course, it probably would have. Now we have laws to protect the exploitation of vulnerable individuals. There's fraud, undue influence, and this was a case where Vernon definitely needed protection from Colonel Parker.
Elvis Presley's private funeral on August 18th is plain and simple, attended by friends, family, and a handful of celebrities. The hearse, led by a silver Cadillac, inches its way past hordes of mourners lining the route to the cemetery.
Over 50,000 fans surrounded Graceland to pay their last respects to Elvis Presley. There were lots of pictures in the newspapers around the country of people lining up to go past Elvis's casket. And there were people who were breaking down, like they were so overwhelmed that their knees buckled. You know, and these are people who didn't know him personally, but for young people who had grown up with Elvis Presley in the 50s, it was as if a little part of their youth had died when Elvis Presley passed away.
The closest members of his entourage and his personal physician, George Nikopoulos, serve as pallbearers. Colonel Parker declines the honor. The autopsy report shows that Elvis died from cardiac arrhythmia.
It wasn't until later when they did an autopsy on Elvis that they found 11 different types of prescription drugs in his body. At the time, there was speculation that due to his overweight nature and the fact that he had all these drugs in his body, that they may have played a role in affecting his heart or giving him a heart attack.
Elvis's heirs were in for a major surprise when his net worth was calculated. At the time of his death, the man who should have been the richest entertainer of all time was valued at just under $5 million.
This was a stunning revelation to the family. Elvis, after all, was the only performer to earn $1 billion in revenue over a 25-year career for music, merchandising, films, recordings, concerts, Vegas. You name it, Elvis earned it, and now there's almost nothing left in comparison.
But when you take a look at his lavish spending during his lifetime, buying gold-plated handguns for his entourage, paying Colonel Parker all of that money, it's not surprising.
Elvis's will, written in March 1977, had appointed his father, Vernon Presley, as executor and trustee. The beneficiaries of the trust are Vernon, Elvis's grandmother, Minnie Mae Presley, and his 9-year-old daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. The will states that Vernon may, at his discretion, give money to other family members as needed.
He appoints his dad as executor. That in and of itself is not so interesting. But what is interesting is that he gives his dad the right to appoint an alternate executor should something happen to him. This is very unusual in estate planning.
It's especially unusual because Vernon Presley, of course, is older than Elvis. So normally when somebody does a will, they're going to name backups and alternatives and not rely on an older person to be the executor and to give the older person that much power to name the successor, because it also exposes that person to the possibility of being taken advantage of, like we saw with Colonel Tom Parker.
The other interesting thing about Elvis's will is that Lisa Marie, his daughter, receives everything at the age of 25. Now, even though he only passed away with $5 million, that money grows over time, and the potential for merchandising and everything else after he passes away could make that astronomical. To give that all to a 25-year-old is a little frightening.
Vernon passes away in 1979, and Minnie Mae dies a year later. By 1980, Lisa Marie is the sole beneficiary of the estate, and Lisa Marie's mother, Priscilla Presley, becomes the trustee. In order to ensure a steady income for the estate, upon Elvis's death, Colonel Tom Parker sets up a licensing operation to produce Elvis merchandise and souvenirs. But once taxes and Parker's 50% are deducted, the estate earns less than $1 million a year. And by this point, the cost of running Graceland is estimated at $500,000 a year.
There had to be more funny business going on. There is no way with merchandising and the type of dollars that could be brought in that the estate was pocketing so little. Again, it's Colonel Tom Parker pulling strings and lining his own pocket.
It turns out that in 1973, Colonel Parker had advised Elvis against joining organizations that would manage copyright and royalties. Instead, Parker had turned it all over to RCA for a one-time buyout fee of $5.4 million, a fraction of their worth. This had made Elvis and his estate ineligible for millions of dollars in royalty payments. It's a shocking revelation.
This sounded like a terrible deal for Elvis. Songwriters at the very least usually get 50% royalties, and this was a one-time check, which sounds good, but I think Colonel Parker was just doing it out of his own self-interest, as you said, to line his pockets.
To make matters worse, while Elvis's estate did get a share of the royalties, it was capped at 50 cents per record. So as prices went up and his records sold for more, Elvis's estate didn't share in any of that.
And yet after Vernon's death, Priscilla asks the Colonel to carry on representing and managing the estate. It needs to be approved by the Shelby County Probate Court.
It's shocking that Priscilla would go back to the Colonel and ask him to be involved in managing the estate. This is the individual who had taken larger percentages than was typical at the time, and even now. And here she is going back to him, asking him to continue staying involved in the estate.
Thankfully, the probate judge realized that there may be a problem here, so he appointed an independent attorney to look into this.
Disconcerted by how much of Elvis's income Parker had taken while Elvis was alive, and amazed that the estate wished to continue the arrangement, presiding judge Joseph Evans appoints attorney Blanchard E. Toole to investigate Parker's compensation agreement and to represent and defend the interests of Lisa Marie Presley.
It's shocking that Parker would receive 50% to manage an artist that isn't even alive.
It was very prudent for the probate judge to want to investigate that, and that's really not an unusual measure. When the probate judge thinks something funny is going on, to investigate it, especially when you've got a minor to protect.
4 months later, a 300-page report from Toole states that charging a 50% commission compared to the industry average of 15 to 20% is extortionate.
In Toole's words, Parker violated his duty both to Elvis and the estate.
Toole reported how the commissions were unreasonable and excessive, and he had a big problem with Colonel Tom Parker.
During a second, more detailed investigation, it comes out that all earnings were paid directly to the trust instead of Parker. And with the IRS now demanding almost $10 million in inheritance taxes, the estate is facing bankruptcy. 2 weeks after receiving the report, Judge Evans comes down hard on Colonel Parker. He orders the co-executors to sue him for fraudulent business practices. 4 years after Elvis Presley's untimely death, tension is erupting between his longtime manager, Colonel Tom Parker, and the Presley family. An investigation ordered by the courts has resulted in a report by attorney Blanchard E. Toole revealing unethical and misguided business practices by Colonel Parker. Parker has two companies, All Star Shows, that splits the proceeds of Elvis's record deals 50-50 with him, and Boxcar Enterprises, the holding company for Elvis's merchandising rights. The 300-page report reveals that Parker got a larger percentage of merchandising after Elvis died. Colonel Parker's cut increased from 40% to 56% after Elvis's death, with only 22% going to the estate.
Colonel Tom Parker had a lot of street smarts. He knew he was going to be left out in the cold, and that's why he approached Vernon Presley to get him to sign this new deal so he could try to hold on to that cash cow.
The report argues that all agreements with Elvis Presley terminated on his death. It also concludes that Elvis lost millions because of Parker's lack of business savvy, including his failure to organize Presley's finances to help minimize his taxes. And it recommends the Presley estate should end all deals with Parker, and that Parker should be forced to repay whatever he has earned from Elvis since his death. Lisa Marie and Priscilla agree, suing the Colonel in June 1982 and ending all contracts with him. And Colonel Parker responds in character. He countersues. But 4 months later, things are settled out of court, with Elvis's estate paying $2 million to buy Colonel Parker out. With Graceland and the mansion costing over $500,000 a year in maintenance and taxes, Lisa Marie is faced with having to sell. But Priscilla and the executors have an idea. Why not make Graceland a museum? Graceland opens its doors to the public June 7, 1982. Only 2 weeks later, Colonel Parker calls the family with some surprising news. Parker reveals he has a large collection of Elvis memorabilia, including newspaper clippings, originals of every record Elvis ever released, and some of the original costumes and programs, all meticulously cataloged and waiting for a proper place to be viewed. He also has Elvis's 1957 gold lame suit, arguably the most iconic rock outfit in history. He offers up the entire collection, a whopping 35 tons of material for $2 million.
I don't think the Colonel was exactly extending an olive branch. It was more likely that he was hard up for cash.
This isn't a guy who's been generous to Elvis in the past, and the big question is, how did he get all this stuff? I mean, did he take it when he wasn't supposed to? So maybe $2 million was a good deal for him because he never should have had the stuff to begin with.
He also drops any claims he had to Presley's estate.
Relations did resume between Parker and the estate in the last few years of Colonel Parker's life. At Colonel Parker's funeral, Priscilla Presley sort of summed up the relationship and said the world is a far richer place because of the collaboration between Elvis Presley and Colonel Parker. However, I think I have to really look and check for my wallet. Although there was no ticket booth on the way in, I'm sure Colonel Parker will have a toll for me to pay on the way out.
In 1993, Lisa Marie Presley turns 25 and gains access to her inheritance. She forms a new trust to continue the successful management of Graceland along with her mother Priscilla. In 2005, Lisa Marie sells a major interest in Elvis Presley Enterprises while retaining ownership of Graceland. On March 27, 2006, Graceland is designated a National Historic Landmark. It's one of the most visited private homes in America, with over 600,000 visitors a year. Elvis remains the best-selling solo artist in the history of recorded music, with estimated album sales of around 600 million units worldwide. Elvis's musical legacy is also kept alive through annual Elvis tribute festivals, featuring hundreds of impersonators. Vigils, which began on the first anniversary of Elvis's death, have mushroomed into an epic annual tourist event. Busloads of fans line up 12 hours in advance, and the myths and legends of the king of rock and roll are relived, retold, and reimagined year after year. Continuing Elvis's tradition of generosity, Lisa Marie oversees the Elvis Presley Charitable Foundation, which was formed to provide services to underprivileged children and their families. It also supports scholarships and programs in music and arts education.
Elvis left an impact on society that will be felt forever.
Elvis Presley will be remembered by a generation that loved the sound of his music and the sound of his voice.